College students graduates of Reddit, what's the craziest thing you ever witnessed in your dorm residence hall? NSW. One day I woke up to a sink sitting in the hallway, like a sink that is built into a countertop or something. Someone must have just ripped a sink out of a countertop from a different building and put it in the hallway on the 4th floor. I had some friends cut down a Christmas tree from campus somewhere and put it up in their dorm room. The only thing is, real Christmas trees are not allowed because they're a crazy fire hazard. They bought one of those things you would put a live plant in, a planter, some 90-degree brackets, and some screws and screwed the tree down. Then they built a false top and sprinkled dirt and rocks, again taken from campus, on it to make it look like the tree was planted in dirt. They convinced Tara that they had an uncle who had a tree farm and allowed them to dig up a real tree to use for the year. My absolute favorite part is that they returned the saw they used to Walmart. Lived in a 21-floor tower. Something like 1,600 students lived in it. 4 guys decided to have a jam session in an elevator and go up and down the building. Had drums, guitar, saxophone, and vocalist. I think every single floor wanted to murder them. I want to make a Pink Floyd cover band that only plays in public restrooms. We'll call ourselves The Stall. I was in Ra. I had 8 residents trap a raccoon and bring it into their dorm to domesticate it. Guess what happens when you let a raccoon in the dorm? It fricks crap up. You didn't let me guess. 2 things. Same dude. We had a guy whose room was at the end of the hall, so it had a little extra space next to his door. A little alcove. We had tour groups come through our dorm with prospective students and their families. Well, on one of those days he tore out a bunch of pics from his Playboys and posted them all over his door and on the walls outside his room. He took 3 chairs from the common room and put them outside his room as well. He then had a sign that said the Bee and Hose waiting room. A mother went absolutely ballistic when she saw that. He got into deep crap for it too. A few months later, when another tour group came through, our Bill, who was a total butthole, was giving kind of a speech to the high schoolers and their families. So our buddy fell out of his room in just his boxers and his hands tied behind his back with a sock in his mouth. He spit the sock out and started yelling, "Bill, untie me." This isn't funny. Our Ra was humiliated. The parents went absolutely nuts over it. Our buddy was kicked out later that day. That second one was pretty funny. My dorm had a secret Santa thing where your Santa would give you a task to do, and if you completed it, you'd get a gift. In the packed dining hall one night shortly before Christmas break, a huge, hairy, completely naked man jumps onto a table, tucks his junk between his legs, and screams, "Daddy only likes me when I'm a little girl." My roommate was his Santa, and as a reward for completing the task, she gave him a teddy bear wearing overalls. Looks like someone went to Stanford. One guy peed on a cookie sheet and let it freeze outside in winter. He took said frozen sheet of pee and slid it under another guy's door when he wasn't there. All the rooms in that dorm were carpeted. That is brilliant. One of my friend's girlfriends had a roommate that would masturbate almost every night. She said it sounded like someone vigorously stirring macaroni. I remember this story every time I cook macaroni. A guy that was wasted and tripping balls went into the wrong room in the middle of the night and was thrown out of said room, across the hall and through the wall into my old room. Turns out there had been a giant hole there that was cheaply patched up years ago. Otherwise there should have been no way he could have gone straight through the wall. It was a cold night, but my roommate and I pushed his dresser up to attempt to cover the hole until someone could fix it. Good times. Haha. A drunk guy walked into my friend's room and started peeing in the corner. He said he thought it was the bathroom. It's a little bit funny, but my friend was so freaked out by it. I would be freaked out too. Most of us left our doors unlocked if we weren't sleeping, but she locked it all the time after that. Guy down the hall was just nasty. Smelled bad, slovenly, but very friendly. He never went to class. You might be thinking gamer, but nope. He was a day trader. Always told us about his wins losses for that day. Anyway, this was before mobile devices, and he hardly ever left his computer as a result. Traded in movements of pennies, so he had milk jugs to pee in. He told us proudly about how much time he saved by peeing in milk jugs. I presumed he'd dump them out routinely, but the first time I caught sight of his room I learned the truth. It was as messy as you'd imagine, but then I saw the jugs all over his room, the floor, windowsill, computer desk. My memory is hazy by now, but I'd say he had at least 21-gallon milk jugs full of pee in his room. To be fair, I couldn't verify that they were all actually full or just waiting in reserve, but at a glance at least some of them were clearly topped off. And honestly, how many gallons of pee is really acceptable to keep in your room? None. The answer is none. Walked into the shared kitchen to make an easy mac. Upon entering, I see this drunk chick sitting on the edge of a table with a drunk dude standing in front of her. They were talking, but I was way too focused on getting my easy mac on, so I didn't think much of it. I set my wet mac in the microwave and set it for 1 2 minutes before strolling back to my dorm. Ding. So I roll back to the kitchen to get my mac, and sure enough, there freaking. Her skirt was pulled up, her pink thong was dangling from one of her ankles, and her legs were wrapped around his waist. Now this guy wasn't thrusting like he is trying to start a fire down there, but based on the sounds this girl was making, he was giving her exactly what she wanted. I did what any sane man would do. I got my mac, removed the lid, gave it a good stir and checked for hard noodles. Once the quality control was finished, I casually walked down the hall to my friend's room and told him that someone destroyed all of the furniture in the kitchen. He of course wanted to check it out for himself, so as he was walking to the kitchen, I got ready for a great reaction. As he gets to the door, he turns and looks in and does nothing. He just stares for a solid 15 seconds. I was starting to think they had stopped. Then he gave the classic "what the frick" shout and turns with an expression of confusion and satisfaction. My work was done. To this day, that was the most satisfying easy mac I've ever had. LOL, that is a perfect TLDR. I was a sophomore at University of Iowa, on the engineering dorm. The problem was that the main cafeteria of the campus was downstairs, so drunk people would get confused and wander to it even though it was closed, then start having fun on other floors. It was Saturday night and pretty miserable outside, so most people were staying in, when we heard a scream, then a loud crack. When we checked on it, there was nobody in the hallway. There was, however, a large smear of blood along the wall, and the exit sign was broken. One of the guys decided to investigate and found a huge guy in the bathroom, bleeding from the face and drunk. Turns out he had the brilliant idea of running down the hallway, leaping into the air, and headbutting the exit sign. ISU student here, and both my sisters went to Iowa. This is entirely believable. I know the exact location you're talking about. Hilarious. One time, my roommate and I hatched quails in our dorm room. We started out with growing plants, then breeding better fish, and from there we kind of escalated to birds. Ordered a cheap incubator and the eggs online, and kept it in the corner of our room without having any real hope that any of them would hatch. 3 of them did, somehow, and they lived in our dorm room for a whole year without the Ra finding out. Helps that they only grow to be about 3 inches tall. I promise you Ra found out, but you were nurturing his bird family. One naked drunk dude jumped through first floor window, as in broke the window with his bare skin. My college divided the dorms into houses, the idea being that you would do stuff with your house and form a community. The problem was that I already had a group of friends and this community was completely obnoxious. So I went to the first required meeting and then promptly did nothing with them ever again. Fast forward 2 months and 2 girls who lived down the hall run up to me and asked to take a picture with me, which I thought weird but sure. Turns out that it was so uncommon for people in my house to see me that I was an item in a photo scavenger hunt. That's freaking hilarious. We had a dude moved onto our hall because his roommate was crapping and pee in the corner of his room. A bunch of guys in my hall collected some masks and dangerous looking items. Pocket knives mostly. I think someone had a saw for some reason, and pretended to have tied a dude to a chair with a bag over his head. Ketchup for fake blood and everything. Full stop. They spent half the night on chat roulette with a sign that said tea or he dies. They didn't actually get any tea, but people's reactions were pretty great. That and the time one of the engineers dented a wall by firing a custom Nerf gun he built down the length of the hall are my only really crazy stories. The MEs and Es at our college teamed up to make the Nerf bullets into mini tasers. Very shortly after, all Nerf guns were banned from campus. That crap hurt. One of the Ras got fired, I can't remember why. He had a week to move out of his dorm room, and it coincided with Mother's Weekend. Lots of moms visiting campus. He decided to get a keg and invite a bunch of people over as a frick you to his bosses. His room was larger than most, since he was an RA. When they broke up the party, the people stumbling out were frat bros and drunk moms, and a couple of grandmothers. The story took an amazing turn once you said grandmothers. The mental image is fantastic. Difficult to choose between these two. First, two guys on the dorm floor got into an argument at an off-campus party. One, let's say John, goes back to his room to sleep it off. The other, let's say Bill, brings 4 friends with him and kicks in John's door. As they rush in to beat up John, John grabs a pair of scissors and stabs one in the gut and one in the arm. Bill and friends do not succeed in beating up John. John was later expelled after he decided to drunkenly light artillery shell fireworks off in the upper stairwell of the dorm. Second, it was 5 AM on a Sunday morning and my friends and I had been up all night. We are walking down the hall to our rooms and past the communal bathroom. We hear an odd hissing splattering noise, so we walk in to check it out. It turns out a drunk butthole had repeatedly kicked the pipe connecting the toilet to the wall, detached it from the wall, and ran. Water shooting out of the wall at fire hydrant strength was making the hissing noise, and it hitting the wall, 8 feet away through the open stall door, was making the splattering noise. We reported it as quick as we could, but it being the ass crack of dawn on a Sunday, no maintenance workers were around, so the water continued spraying for like an hour. On the 8th floor of the dorm, ended up flooding the 6th, 7th, and 8th floors and created an 8-story waterfall when it reached the stairwell. Water in the basement laundry area ended up being knee deep. John is a freaking warrior. So I was a freshman, with a roommate who liked to do crazy things fairly regularly. One night, I came back around 1:30 AM on a weekend to find him and his friends smoking weed with a homeless dude in our room that frequented our campus. I'm weirded out, but okay. Dude leaves shortly after I get there. My roommate gave him a box of power bars and some weed. The next night, our room was broken into. I had some cash and an iPod stolen, and my roommate had his laptop, phone, and wallet, or something like that, stolen. Worse, he was assaulted by 4 large guys just outside our dorm. It got caught on security camera, and he was attacked with a crowbar and slashed with a knife. Still don't really know what the connection between these events are. The public safety officer I talked to said he guessed the guy on the first night had pointed out our room to friends of his, saying that we were an easy target. Druggy guy down the hall had his druggy girlfriend come visit. Druggy girlfriend ODs in the handicapped bathroom very early the next morning and dies. I lived on the 5th floor of a monstrous 6-story building. One night in February, the fire alarms went off at like 2 AM and the building was evacuated. No fire, no nothing. We all went back inside. The next Tuesday, the alarms went off at the same time. This time someone had taken out the fire extinguishers and thrown them from the top of the stairwells where they exploded when reaching the ground. Obviously, you can't use elevators in a fire situation and the stairwells were a disaster. It wasn't so much fun running through that. This type of thing then happened every Tuesday night for at least a month. They eventually caught the people when they tried to hit 2 dorms back to back. Fire alarm pranks are the worst pranks. No meme today, just this baby elephant, but he loves reading comments. Leave one for him to read. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.